Okay, everyone, welcome back to TowerGate, day 421, May the 5th, 2018, part 2. Part 2. Okay, so now that we've laid out basically how we got to where we are today, let's focus on a little bit where we might be moving forward from here, based on everything that we know. And we can speculate on some things that we don't know, but let's go ahead and move forward. So right now, I want to approach this by asking some questions. So we do have a lot of questions, and what I want to focus on is the fact that we really, even though we haven't talked much about this from this angle, but what we really have going on is parallel investigations. We have the Mueller investigation, which is, of course, a witch hunt, which is a continuation of the insurance policy, the deep state coup, against Trump, while at the very same time, we have this investigation by the Inspector General, who's looking into many things, including the actions of people within the FBI and DOJ during the 2016 election, and it's still continuing. Now, he may just stop at the 2016 election and not look into anything that happened after that, but I doubt that he can do that. I think he's probably going to be looking at any new additional information that would have come to him, or anything that he would have learned after the election that may help him in his investigation for what was going on before the election. So what we have is a parallel situation, two investigations going on. The investigation to take out Trump, and then the investigation by the Inspector General to see what's been going on within the FBI and DOJ, which would, of course, be the frame-up itself, which Mueller is currently ahead of. So it sets up a very, very interesting situation where at some point the IG's investigation, if it's a legitimate investigation, is going to run directly into Mueller and his investigation that's going on now, which is nothing more than a continuation of the original investigation, the original counter-intel operation against Trump. So the Inspector General is conducting an investigation that will look into the FBI and DOJ activities in the 2016 election, which primarily focused on the small group, which, as we've already talked about, it appears at sometime in summer of 2017, late summer 2017, Horowitz busted up the small group, whether it was on purpose or whether it was just a result of his questioning all these people and them realizing that they were caught. Also, we have the first group of reports on the FBI's handling of Clinton email investigation also involved the small group. And of course, what I'm saying here is that we learn that because there's so much in the Horowitz report that we can't grasp it all. So he says, well, we're going to have to do it in groupings. We're going to have to put out the first batch, and it's going to deal with the email investigation and how it was handled by the FBI into Hillary Clinton emails, and he's also going to include the FISA abuses, or the peculiarities, irregularities about what happened with the FISA court getting the FISA warrants and such. So those will be the first two things that we get from the IG. And both of these things, all these things at this point, involve the small group. Also, we have Strzok, Page, Baker, and Priestep, who are all part of the small group, who are, we believe, have been cooperating. And, of course, Priestep is the only one that maintained his position as the #1 man for counterintelligence at the FBI, while Strzok, Page, and Baker were all kind of demoted, moved, or what have you. They all stayed on until today, or Friday, I should say. Friday, we learned that Baker and Page had resigned, probably in the wake of the IG report, which they know is coming out. Probably they don't want to be around the FBI after this report comes out because it's, I don't know, they probably have their own reasons. We'll probably find out more later. But anyway, we do know that's the case. So the big question is, for all of us right now, will Inspector Horowitz, the custodian, shoot straight and deliver the truth about the misconduct and the crimes he has uncovered? Well, so far, if we just look at what he did, releasing the text, Page and Strzok text, that was Horowitz. The stuff we learned about McCabe, exposing McCabe, recommend going to the, it was Horowitz that went to Sessions and Rosenstein and Wray and the FBI and said, hey, here's what I got. I think this guy, we're going to be giving criminal referrals on him, okay? You probably want to fire him. He's got a lot of problems, which led to his firing. And then, of course, Horowitz followed up by recommending criminal referrals for McCabe. So at this point, if we just look at what Horowitz has done up to this point, we have to say he is a straight shooter. We've been given no reason to believe otherwise. But that doesn't mean he doesn't come out and release a report and try to cover up a lot of things and try to keep this thing down to just a few people that he needs to serve up in order to serve up some scalps, make this go away so that everything can move forward and get back to normal. Or will he blow the whole thing up? We really don't know. But we're going to have to find out, and we'll know very soon. Will the IG report be followed up by more criminal referrals by the Inspector General? I'd say most likely. I would think. We haven't seen anything about Huber at this point, but just what we've seen so far, I think it's very likely that there will be more criminal referrals by the Inspector General after he releases the report. We'll just have to wait and see, but I think that's a pretty fair guess. And the fact that Baker and Page resigned today tells us that there's a likelihood that they know something very bad is coming for them and other people that were part of that small group involved in all these activities. That's just a guess. Will Huber drop indictments after the first report is public? Well, so far Huber has not done anything as far as we know. Now, he may be impaneling grand juries. He may be doing other things. We don't know. But as far as we know, we haven't seen anything visible that we could associate with the work of John Huber. If he's working, and we assume he is, he's being very quiet. He's not leaking anything. We're not getting anything about Huber, really. He's just kind of in there like a ghost. But maybe his role will not be fully known until the IG report comes out, and then maybe he will be the one who will follow up and actually launch prosecutions and indictments, as opposed to just launching criminal referrals to the DOJ like they did with McCabe. Huber may come out and just start, because he doesn't need a U.S. attorney or anyone else. He has prosecutorial power. He can make an indictment. So we'll just have to see, and if Huber's role becomes more front and center after the IG report comes out. If not, I don't know why he's there. What's the point of having him there? If they're not going to prosecute anybody, if they're not going to do any of this, then why bring him in? So we have to think that Sessions brought Huber in for a reason, not, for just wallpaper. He's obviously there to serve some purpose. So we will know more about Mr. Huber in the days to come. Here's a good question. Why do we never see or hear interviews with Page, Strzok, Baker, or Priestep? And why did the investigating committees lose interest in interviewing them? This is something we've talked about before. If you remember what happened, Nunes and Grassley were going apeshit because the DOJ, FBI were blocking them from interviewing certain witnesses and getting certain documents. This led Nunes up to the point where he finally got to the point where he was putting out his memo dealing with the FISA abuse. And of course, there was a lot of fighting back and forth about what would be redacted, what wouldn't be redacted, what would be here, what would be there, what could we learn, what could we know, what we could not know, all that kind of stuff. Then they had that little meeting, which involved Rosenstein and Sessions and Ray and I don't know who else, but they had that little meeting. And then they obviously resolved the issues that they had. So then the Nunes memo comes out. And just the week before that, the FBI had given permission to Nunes and Grassley to interview a lot of these people who were part of the small group, including Page, Strzok, Baker, and Priestep. But suddenly, they get this authority to do it, the approval to do it, but they don't. They don't do any of these interviews. So it tells me that there was some type of a deal cut. Now, Rosenstein can't disclose the IG investigation, but everyone knows it's going on. So my guess is in that deal, they probably reached some sort of a deal and a deal on the memo for what could be in the memo, what couldn't be in the memo, what would be redacted, what have you. But probably also, Rosenstein probably as part of that deal said, you know, these people you want to interview, you've now been given permission to interview them, but I have to warn you that you could hurt yourself by interviewing these people, because once they're interviewed, you're going to have people on your committees who are going to leak all kinds of stuff. And these people that you want to interview, who may have stuff leaked about them, they may be an integral part of a future investigation, probably a criminal prosecution or something like that. So you may want to be very careful. You might compromise people who you might compromise them as witnesses if you bring them into your committee, interview them, and allow what you know is going to happen, a lot of leaks. So maybe Nunes thought it over along with Grassley and said, you know, we probably don't want these people interviewed. If the Inspector General is doing his job and he's interviewing these people, he'll get all the information we want. We'll eventually get it. We're just going to have to wait a while. We got other things we can focus on right now. Let's just let the IG do his work. And once the IG comes out and puts out his report, if we're not satisfied that he did a thorough investigation, if we're not satisfied with his findings or recommendations, we can always go back and interview these people, get the information we need, and use that to push for a special counsel, which I think is inevitably going to happen at some point. I honestly believe that. Unless Huber, see, that's the pressure Sessions is under. Everyone says, we need a special counsel. We need a special counsel. They keep saying, no, Huber and Horowitz can handle it. So Huber and Horowitz have to deliver. If what they come out with does not satisfy you, me, millions of Trump supporters, members of Congress who are investigating this stuff, if they come out with and go lame on us, then we're all just, okay, that was a waste of time. We need an actual special counsel to look into this stuff, and that's exactly what's going to happen. They know that. So it'll be very interesting to see how they walk this line. That's where we're headed. Now, Devin Nunes is working on an investigation currently in the State Department and the intel agency's role in the dossier and the frame-up. Horowitz nor Huber have been given a mandate to investigate the intel community and the State Department. This will require a special counsel. If Nunes produces compelling evidence that there was violations committed by State Department officials and intel heads, and we would be talking about Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, and the unwitting D&I, James Crapper. By the way, this is coming. 100% guarantee it. And soon. So will the IG report result in Rosenstein's having to resign? If Rosenstein is the target of a criminal referral, or if he has committed acts of misconduct, or is shown to have conflicts or bias, he will resign. Unless Rosenstein is cut or cuts a deal. Of course, I still think that Rosenstein is leaving sooner than later. That's just my gut feeling. And I think after the IG report comes out, I think Rosenstein has to resign. I really do. I don't know how he can possibly stay in his position when he becomes the target. He shouldn't be there now. He wrote the memo to Trump to fire Comey with the reasons why. He signed off on one of the surveillance warrants. He was the U.S. lead attorney in the 10X case, which led to the Uranium One deal in Virginia. He's totally compromised. He should have recused himself from the very beginning. It was he that should have recused himself, not Sessions. And by now, Sessions should have unrecused himself, put himself back in charge. He should have pushed Rosenstein out, maybe fired him. But at some point, this thing has to get corrected, and the way it's running right now is just not right. So now I want to go to finish up this video by taking a look at something that I've hit on a little bit here, but I really want to hone in on it now. And it's based on two questions that were asked by Patty Willing. Patty Willing, of course, those of you who've been around for a while know Patty is an outstanding member of the community here. She has posted some fantastic comments over the months that she's been a sub here and coming to TowerGate. She is on the ball. She's a thinker. she's posted a lot of great comments, but I have to say that these are Hall of Fame comments here, and it's the questions that she asked. There's 2 questions specifically. I'm going to focus mainly on the second one, but I'm going to give you the first one, and you'll see where this is leading. So the first question Patty asked, she said, is there a point to where a special counsel itself becomes an obstruction, an obstacle which may impede the president from devoting his full attention to the health and welfare of the USA, if said obstacle is not removed? And I replied to her comment, and I said, yes, I think we are beyond that point. Now, the president, the attorney general, the assistant attorney general, and the Congress all have the constitutional authority under the Constitution to remove Mueller. All of them. The president, the attorney general, the assistant attorney general, the Congress can all remove Mueller. She asked a follow-up question, and this is the one I want to focus on. Can a group, aka the special counsel, be sued or indicted for obstruction of justice? Has special counsel ever been sued or indicted for obstruction? Very good question. It's a great question because it opens you up when you think that question through. I mean, really think it through. It takes you down a road where you see that the parallel paths of Horowitz and Mueller have to cross. When you look at that question, to answer that question, it takes you down that road. That's where we're going now. I will respond to that question now, Patty. In fact, it is happening now. In response to, how'd you word that? Can a group, AA special counsel, be sued or indicted? Well, as a matter of fact, Paul Manafort, the special counsel, is being sued as we speak by Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort is suing Uncle Bob, the executioner, on the grounds that Mueller never had any legal authority to investigate Manafort, no probable cause, and no mandate in his special counsel instructions. But I think Patty is talking about a criminal suit. This is actually a civil suit. Big difference. So yes, special counsel Mueller is now being sued or challenged in a civil suit. But in regards to a criminal suit, that's another matter. As far as I know, in the history of our country, I'm not aware of any special counsel ever being sued, criminally sued, or indicted or charged while he was in the process of an investigation. I'm not aware of that ever happening in U.S. history. So, I will comment on one other thing, though. Not exactly the same situation, but kind of in the same ballpark. During the Watergate crisis, the Watergate thing, Nixon actually did fire Archibald Cox. Now, he didn't fire the special, what was called prosecutor at that time. He didn't actually fire special prosecutor Archibald Cox himself. What happened was Nixon went to his attorney general and said, hey, I'm fed up with Archibald Cox, the special prosecutor. I want you to fire him. The attorney general said, I'm sorry, Mr. President. I can't do that. In fact, I think I have to resign. He resigned. So Nixon went to the deputy attorney general, said, I want you to fire Archibald Cox, the special prosecutor. I want you to fire him now. And the assistant attorney general said, sorry, Mr. President, I can't do that. In fact, I have to resign. So he resigned. So Nixon went to the number 3 man. That would have been Robert Bork, the solicitor general. And he said, Bob, you're the number 3 man. The other 2 guys have resigned. I want you to fire Archibald Cox, the special prosecutor, now. And Bork said, well, Mr. President, you have the legal constitutional authority to order me to do that. So I will do that. But I have to tell you that I'm going to resign as soon as I do it. Nixon said, fine, fire Cox and you can do whatever the hell you want. So Bork fired Cox and then resigned. And that was called the Saturday Night Massacre. Let's also keep in mind that during the Watergate fiasco, 2 attorney generals went to jail. John Mitchell was the attorney general when the Watergate break-in occurred. Then he left and Mr. Kleindienst came in, Richard Kleindienst, to replace him as Attorney General. And he was the Attorney General as a lot of the cover-up was going on. And after the investigation, the whole thing blew apart, and Watergate came tumbling down, both Attorney Generals, both of them were charged, convicted, sentenced, and went to jail. Both of them. Kleindienst and what's his name? So, there you go. But what if? What if? That is why I love this question. What if I.G. Horowitz discovers that Mueller is part of the frame-up, the insurance policy? Horowitz gave us this particular jewel about the insurance policy. Remember, that's what we learned about it. Horowitz released, he sent these texts over to the Department of Justice. Congress demanded that they be released. They were. Horowitz wanted them released. Horowitz wanted that released. He wanted us to know about that insurance policy. That's exactly what he wanted us to know. So Horowitz is investigating the small group. They are instrumental in the frame-up of the insurance policy. You see, when Comey was fired, Mueller came in and assumed the services of the small group and their investigative findings. Mueller continued the insurance policy, and still to this day, he is continuing the frame-up or the insurance policy. The IG, or the Department of Justice and the FBI, dismantled the small group early on, sometime in the late summer 2017. The IG saw the page-struck messages, the insurance policy. We know what that is. Mr. Horowitz is not stupid. He knows what that is. So now, Mueller is still benefiting from other DOJ and FBI resources he has in his Hillary donor posse. And he has a Title I search warrant. Horowitz knows this too. Would Horowitz reveal in a report that Uncle Bob, the special counsel, the special executioner, was involved in a mass conspiracy to take down the president? Would Horowitz do that? Well, if we are waiting, or if we are writing the best spy novel or political thriller, then that would be the best hook in the history of spy novels, that the hunter becomes the hunted. Probably Horowitz will put out the facts of his findings in his report and turn it over to the Congress, the president, the media, and the public, and let them sort it out. That's what I think he would do. So let's keep in mind a couple key points. If it is true, what we have been told, that Comey, one of the first calls he made after being fired when he got back on his airplane and headed back to D.C., one of the first calls he made was to Mueller. We know that Mueller and Rosenstein and Comey have been joined at the hip for over 25 years, and they have served the Clintons well. We know that they are deeply entwined with people inside the small group who have deep connections to the Clintons, such as Lynch and Yates, and probably others that we don't even know what the relationships are with the Clintons. So we can see with the formulation of the continuation of the investigation into Trump and the insurance policy could have been coordinated somewhere in that week after Comey was fired and Rosenstein was named, appointed Mueller. But we know from the recent texts that it had a lot more to do with the people in the small group selecting Mueller, and then Rosenstein essentially just being the one who made it official. So imagine, here you are, you're Horowitz. We already know from everything that we just talked about that he gets appointed to investigate these things in January of 2017. Horowitz comes in and starts investigating. Then, in the middle of his investigation, he comes in January. Then in May, Comey's fired. Then in comes Mueller. Now, by that point, 5 months into it, Horowitz originally came in January to specifically focus on the handling of the Clinton email investigation by the FBI, which is the small group. and would include Comey. So Horowitz is into his investigation when Comey is fired. Out goes Comey, in comes Mueller. Mueller essentially does nothing more than replace Comey. It's still the same people in the small group running the operation, running the counter-intel operation against Trump. They're still trying to cover up their dealings and the Hillary Clinton email, while Horowitz is simultaneously trying to figure out what exactly happened. So he starts interviewing all these people. Then he discovers in the late spring, probably somewhere about the time that Comey was fired, Horowitz discovers the Strzok page text. And what does he get? Well, we know what we got from it. He's got a lot more. We learn about the insurance policy. We know that they're trying to take down Trump, and we get all these other things. And of course, that leads him to look into McCabe, which then he puts together the fact that they were leaking stuff to the Wall Street Journal. It ties in Page and Strzok and all these people. So the next thing that happens is that Horowitz goes and interviews Page. She realizes that she's being set up because Strzok and McCabe are apparently saying, well, I don't know anything about it. Maybe Lisa Page had something to do with it. And in which case she realizes she's being framed or she's being targeted or scapegoated. So she says, hey, McCabe told me to do it. And probably Horowitz said, well, that's not what he told us. And she probably said, well, I got evidence. I can prove it. And she apparently produced the evidence for Horowitz. He saw the evidence, and that's how they got McCabe. So he's looking into this. He's digging into this. And at some point, about 3-4 months later, we get to the end of the summer, late summer. Literally, the entire small group that Horowitz had probably stumbled onto is disbanded. They're gone. There's, 11, 12 of them? More than half of them have quit or been fired, and the remaining ones have been demoted and are now believed to be working for Horowitz, the special counsel. The only one guy who remained in his place, but is still believed to be cooperating, is Priestep. And we know that he was deeply involved in every bit of it, because we have the texts where they talk about they're having these meetings, and they're talking a lot. Strzok talks a lot about the fact that he's sharing, I got to talk to Bill. I have a meeting with Bill. Bill is involved. They're talking about Bill Priestep in everything. So there is where we are. Now this leads us to the logical question, and where Patty Willing is kind of taking us with this question. If we have these two parallel investigations, and at some point Horowitz stumbles onto the small group, finds out what they're up to, and starts looking into this, it's not going to take him long to figure out what the insurance policy was all about. It's also not going to take him long to figure out, as he continues his investigation, to figure out that when Mueller came in, it's not like Mueller came in and found out about all this and blew the whistle on it and said, hey, you guys have been trying to conduct a deep state coup. No, not by any stretch. And in fact, it appears that Mueller did nothing more than replace Comey, and that he's going after Trump just as hard. He's part of it. He's deeply connected to Comey and Rosenstein. They go back a long way. And all these other people that he brought in his team, they're all Trump haters. They all got deep connections to the Clintons, to the deep state, to other insiders, people who want to be rid of Trump. So anyway, Horowitz comes in. Clearly he had something to do with busting up this coup. So apparently that must have been on Horowitz's mind. He's like, wow, I'm in the middle of this investigation. I've just discovered a deep state coup against the president. That's very bad. Well, what can I do? He probably went to Sessions. He probably went to Sessions and Rosenstein. And of course, maybe he didn't go to Rosenstein because maybe he figured out that Rosenstein's part of it. So he may have went to just Sessions and said, hey man, I've just stumbled on some really heavy stuff, dude. I think there's a coup going on here, and I think Mueller may be part of it. So who knows what he told Sessions. But we do know at some point, by either the questioning of these people, putting pressure on them, force them to either say, uh-oh, Horowitz is asking questions, I'm getting out of here. And as long as I work for the FBI, I have to talk to him. I don't want to talk to him. I'm quitting. I'm resigning. Gone. They get their own private attorneys. They're going to do it the other way. Then other people apparently cooperated. Page, Strzok, Baker, Priestep. They apparently said, uh-oh, he's onto us. We're busted. We're all going to jail. What's the best I can do? And he probably told them, cooperate. Cooperate with me, and I'll do everything I can to keep you out of jail. But you got to cooperate with me. And that's why they kept them on. That's my guess. But you have to, if you follow this thing to its natural conclusion, you can only conclude that at some point, as Horowitz is going down his path, and Mueller is continuing down his path, at some point there has to be a cross point where they cross, where Horowitz discovers what is going on. The question is Horowitz He has to know at least what we know and a hell of a lot more. And we know what we know, right? It's a deep state coup. So Horowitz has to know this. So what is he going to do? And like I said in my final statement there, I don't believe that Horowitz is going to come out and say, okay, I'm going to lay out a grand conspiracy of a deep state coup. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he is going to issue his reports grouping by grouping and say, okay, here's what happened during the email investigation. Here's what happened with the FISA abuse. Here's what happened with the Clinton Foundation. Here's what happened with this. Here's what happened with that. Here's what McCabe did. He's going to lay all this out, I think, as individual sort of findings that he's going to put in his report. He's probably going to make some referrals, maybe criminal referrals. Maybe Mr. Huber will drop some prosecutions. Who knows exactly what's going to happen there. But I doubt that he's going to lay out a picture of a grand conspiracy for us. I think he's going to give us all the pieces and say, here's the pieces. They're really big, they're really colorful, they all fit right together. I'm not going to put them together for you, Congress, and the public, and the media. I'm just going to give you these pieces. Here they are, and it's up to you. I don't want to be the guy, okay? I'm going to give you everything you need. Here it is. You can tie these things together. And I think that that's how this is going to work. I think we're going to get a lot of parts of his various investigations, and then it will be up to the Congress, the president, the public, the media, to sit there and go, okay, we now have all these pieces. Let's put all this together. Yeah, this is what this shows us. And we'll eventually find, and it may be 10, 20 years, 30, 40 years, maybe we'll all be gone before the government will finally admit that there was an attempted coup. They still haven't admitted it about Kennedy. It's been 55 years. Will this government come out and admit that there's been a deep state coup at play? No, not in those words. But they are going to have to produce some justice. Some people are going to have to go to jail. Some people are going to have to be indicted, prosecuted. There's real hardcore, serious crimes here. And if they don't, they run the risk of the DOJ and the FBI losing all credibility. They also run the risk of having the public. The public's going to be really angry. The people who support Trump and know what's going on, if they come out with these reports and they produce nothing but a bunch of just bullshit. Okay, they're going to have to come out and they're going to have to serve up some justice to some people who were involved in committing some very heinous crimes, very, very high crimes. So I think that that's what we're looking at here. We'll watch in the days ahead and see when that IG report comes out. Obviously, Horowitz is stating that he just received some information regarding the Hillary email investigation, and it's going to delay his address in Congress or coming before Congress next week. Whether or not that affects the release of the report, I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. But it doesn't sound like it's good for Hillary. It doesn't sound like it's good for Comey. It doesn't sound like it's good for the deep state. Things are turning. Things are turning. You know, months and months and months ago, when we were really down here because everything was the Mueller investigation and all totally dark clouds, there was no sunshine whatsoever. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. We couldn't even see anything. We knew the Horowitz may be back in the background doing something, but we just didn't know what was going on. But now, it's back. I said back then, I said, you know, this is eventually going to work itself out. That eventually all the lies and all the Russia-Trump collusion, all this garbage, the dossier, this stuff's all eventually going to be proven to be garbage. And eventually the truth will rise to the surface. Well, whether or not, and that's happening now, whether or not the government has the courage to admit these types of failings, they don't. We already know from past history, the government will never ever admit when they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Okay, but it doesn't mean that we aren't going to know that or learn it. We know what happened with the Kennedy assassination, okay? Basically, we know what happened. It was a coup d'etat, okay? They've never admitted to it, but we all know what happened. But in this particular case, I do think Horowitz and Huber are going to have to serve up some scalps to try to save the integrity of the institutions that they're there to protect. And I think that that's what we are going to see. But I don't expect Horowitz to lay out a grand conspiracy. I think he's going to leave that up to us and the media and other people. So we'll just follow up from here. But thank you for tuning in to this special edition of TowerGate, this special two-parter. So you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back on Sunday with more news. See you. Bye.